2 Corinthians 10. We ready? 3 more weeks after this, 11, 12, and 13. 13 is really nice and short and sweet. So we may do a little celebration because I think that's like August 31st. Is that right? Yeah. So we may have a dessert for you on the 31st for all of you that came to all 29 of the Corinthians. So I don't think there was 29. I think we doubled up on a couple of them. So it'll be me. So I'll get myself a nice cookie cake. So I know it's true. Huh? What's that? Yeah. Exactly. No one taught it, so I guess that's me. So I was kind of trying to kill time for Ashley to get back in here, but she can figure this out. All right. 10. Interesting. Okay. For those of you that have kind of lost track of where we are in the story, I want to catch everyone up, just to make sure we're good and we know when 2 Corinthians was written, the context of it, because this is going to be key for tonight's. All right. So first missionary journey, he goes nowhere near anything. Second missionary journey, he eventually makes his way to probably to Troas. He's going to catch a boat back, I think. He gets a Macedonian call, goes across, hits Philippi, hits Thessalonica, hits Berea, comes down to the little thunder, to Athens, does the Mars Hill thing, and then eventually goes further south to Corinth, spends 18 months there in Corinth, okay? Eventually makes his way back to Syrian Antioch, all right? Heads out on the third missionary journey, and he is going to write 1 Corinthians from Ephesus, which is where he goes straight on his third missionary journey. He's there for 3 years. He writes the first letter to Corinthians. We think Titus goes over at some point. Not necessarily he's carrying the letter. Usually Trophimus is the mailman, all right? But Titus kind of goes along at some point. We find that interaction. Evidently, the plot was, I'm going to send you over, and then I want you to come back. I'll meet you in Troas, all right, which is just north of Ephesus. We'll meet up there, and then we'll go on to Philippi, and then we'll go down to Corinth and all that stuff, all right? We know Paul leaves Ephesus, goes to Troas, and he can't find Titus. And he doesn't know what happened. He doesn't think the first letter was just too mean or whatever it was, which we'll get into a little bit tonight. If it was too tough and they beat him up, killed him, whatever, it's Corinth. I mean, seriously, no, you never know what could happen, all right? Eventually, he continues on to Philippi, and that's where Titus catches up, tells him all about it, and Paul's, this second letter to the Corinthians is basically Paul sitting in Philippi going, man, I'm exhausted. I am just tired. This is hard. Ministry's hard. And dealing with people and dealing with situations and doing all this, it's just hard. But it's this glorious kind of a hard thing to do. And that's why I always love 2 Corinthians 5. It's one of those key chapters in the Bible that I would kind of trade out the rest of the Bible for if you made an offer for me. And so he continues to progress. Last week we looked at chapters 8 and 9, which tend to be more that situation of, hey, we're going to take up a collection for the Judean church, the Judean believers, because there's a famine back in Judea. Let's take up an offering for them, provide that for them. And then in 10, he jumps in, and what he's going to be doing here is he's going to be defending his ministry, okay? Now, you kind of have to not necessarily read between the lines, but there's a hint that there's somebody out there that is just wearing Paul out in Corinth, just bad-mouthing him, talking about him bad, critiquing him, judging him, complaining about him. Not that ever happens in the church, that no one ever questions, demeans anything, the leadership of the church. Everybody just comes along. And if anybody has a complaint or has a thought, they always just come to the leader and make that clear, and you get to have that discussion. It's such a beautiful thing, all right? This is before we knew better? Okay. Yeah, no, this is, I don't know what Paul's talking about on half this, but I'm just going to say, I guess this happens at some point to some people. It's funny. We went to the Cove, the Billy Graham Training Center, what, 3 weeks ago? I forget. It seems like a long time ago. Too much going on. And we're sitting there, how many, 150 pastors and their wives, and kind of just for a pastor renewal retreat. And we're sitting there, and every single person had a horror story of something going on and something this, and it was like, man, this is just such an easy job. Why can't it just be easy? And I say, because people are just people, and I'm flawed, and people are flawed, and it's a bad combination, and you throw them in a church where they're supposed to be nice, and it just doesn't work a lot of times. And so Paul's got somebody that's wearing him out. Okay, so like I said, you got to kind of read between the lines to find this guy, and I'll try and point it out along the way. On my sheet, it's in the pink highlighter. You can see this guy, all right? So can you see it, Holland? More or less? All right, let's go. All right, now, I, Paul, make a personal appeal to you. Your text may say, I myself am urging you and begging you, pleading with you, all right? It's parakaleo. I'm going to sit down next to you and invite you, please, I'm begging you on this, all right? I, Paul, make a personal appeal, or I urge you, all right, to you by the gentleness and graciousness of Christ. You may have meekness. Yeah, you have meekness? Okay. This is an awesome word, okay? Now, in our sort of vocabulary, what does it mean to be weak? I'm sorry, to be meek. Did I Freudian slip right there? All right, that it means weakness. Meekness equals weakness. You're going with the no on this. All right, blessed are those who are meek, for they will get run over. No, what does it say? They will inherit the earth. Okay. So what is meekness? In our culture, it is generally defined as weakness, softness, humble, quiet, shy, reserved, wouldn't harm a fly kind of a thing, okay? And that's not a bad way of defining it. I heard a great definition of it the other day. It says, it's the person who knows full well how to use his sword, but he never takes it out of the sheath. Because it's power under control. It's power managed, focused, and under control. It's not weakness, all right? It's simply, I have my sword, and I haven't taken it out yet. And I'm going to wait and sit here, and I will take as much as I can. Moses, when Miriam and Aaron are wearing him out about this wife that he took in Numbers 12, it says he kind of endured all of this because, and I love that Moses writes this in Numbers, that Moses was the meekest man who ever lived. It's according to Moses. So, all right. But it's this idea that his power under control. And can you see that in the life of Moses? How many times could Moses have just absolutely lost it? But he only does it one time. And God goes, that's it. I can't let you in. All right? So God's expectations are high. But Paul's using this. I'm going to make a personal appeal to you by the gentleness, the power under control, and the graciousness or the fair judgment of Christ. Okay, so he's basing this appeal on the nature of Christ. I, who am humble among you in person, to your face, prosopon, all right, but bold into you when I'm absent. All right, so let's think the dynamics here. Paul says, I am humble, and this is the Greek word tapiainos, which means to be humbled, to be in a humble state. A blind beggar would be in a humbled state. That's tapiainos. They don't have any value, right? That's why they're humble, okay? I'm nobody. I'm nobody. That's why I'm humble. So I'm humble when I'm among you or in you. You may have translated. Anybody have different? Among you, in you? It's a Greek word in, all right? But I'm bold into you when I'm not with you. And how does he do that? Thank you, Megan. With his letters. That his letters, he sends these letters, and you feel the word, when I'm among you, I'm really a nice guy. But when I'm away from you, like when I was in Ephesus and I sent the letter to you, it was like, oh, Paul, you're just killing us. We thought we were doing really well, but you just slammed on us about divisions in the church. And then this guy who has his stepmom, and we were tolerating this. And, one thing after another, that it was just, he was bold into them with his letters. But when Paul shows up and he's in the room, how is he? Humble. So it's like, I'm bold here, I'm quiet here, I'm shy here. So there's a dynamic here that's in play. Verse 2 says, and here's where he's driving his point. I beg you that when I am present, I will not need to be bold with the confidence or persuasion by which I'm thinking or planning to challenge certain people or to dare you to say anything, all right? Because these certain people are the ones that are challenging him. They are speaking ill of him. Seems like they are speaking ill of him. We'll see a little more clearly here in the text. Who think we are behaving or walking. It's peripateo, which means walking around. Peri, it means around, and pateo is not potato. P-A-T-E-O, pateo, is to walk, all right? So peripateo, we think, or who think we are walking according to the flesh or in an unspiritual way. I don't know why the Holman translates it that way. Just we know what according to the flesh means, all right? They just need to translate it that way. Okay, so I'm thinking I'm going to have to challenge people. I'm going to have to step up and go, all right, you think I'm walking according to the flesh? You think I'm living in an unspiritual way? Show me. I'm challenging you. I'm daring you to step up and say something. Say something right here, all right? It'd be pretty bold for a guy to call a business meeting and go, I'm here, take your best shot. What's your main complaint about me? Where am I walking in the wrong way? If you got something to say, I'm right here. Say it. And that's essentially what he's saying. He's saying, I'm begging you, don't make me do that. Don't make me do that, all right? We need to work this out. We need to evaluate this. So if you're that certain person that he's talking to, you need to not have a high estimation of what you think, okay? Because that's not who I am. I am not one who walks this way. 3, it starts to explain it. For though we live in the flesh, we live in the body, the sarx, all right? We live in this, all right? We walk in this is actually the literal translation. Though we walk in the flesh, and that doesn't mean sinful. We're all made of flesh, all right? And we walk in this way. This is who we are, all right? We do not wage war according to the flesh, all right? It means we don't battle. We don't discuss things. We don't interact with people in sometimes confrontational ways. We don't do that in an unseemly, unspiritual, fleshly way, okay? That's not what we do. That's not what we do, even though that's kind of what you're accusing me of. Since the weapons of our warfare are not fleshly, worldly. We don't argue this way. We don't speak this way. We don't use slanderous terms. We don't use gossip. We don't use these things that would be seen as fleshly, worldly, all right? So we are in the flesh, but we don't wage war in this way. Our weapons are not this way, all right? But what are they? On the contrary, they are powerful through God toward the demolition of strongholds or fortresses. So our weapons, the means by which we do interact and are effective, are not worldly in that they are sinful, that they are harmful. And we've used this term a lot around here, the idea of something that is kakos, K-A-K-O-S. It's just mean. It's harmful. It's destructive, all right? And the other side, the flip side of that, is things that are kalos, K-A-L-O-S. They build up. They're excellent. They're praiseworthy. It's just, man, I'm around this guy. He makes me feel great. He's always helping me. He's complimentary. He's all these things. That's kalos. Kakos is this guy's always just trying to tear me down. He's just mean for no reason, right? And it says, we don't use those. That's not our warfare. Our warfare, right? And they are powerful through God for the demolition of strongholds, or literally the tearing down of strongholds. The idea of the action is moving down, kata. It means to move down or to destroy things down. So these fortresses, these sort of satanic, demonic fortresses that are being built up in and around our society, our church, our whatever, our weapons are meant to tear those things down, not the people, all right? Because fleshly, worldly, sarx things tear people down, not the strongholds. Everybody with me? You following the difference? Okay, I want you to understand, because what Paul is very clear on this is, I have no desire to tear a person down and to destroy a person, even though what? That's what they're doing to me. They're insulting me. They're throwing these things at me. They're challenging me, saying I live in an unspiritual way or according to the flesh. I don't want to do that. I don't want it to be personal. I want to go, this is where you are stepping across a line. And our weapons are to address the fortresses, not the people inside the fort, okay? Which is why I love Paul, because he's so above everybody else. It just kills me, all right? We demolish, same word, tear down, arguments, and this is, it's the Greek word logismos. We get a word logic from this, the logic. We tear down your logic is your argument, all right? We tear down logismos and every high-minded thing that is raised up against the knowledge of God. What are high-minded things? Anybody ever sort of address that? To be high-minded and destructive at the same time, that's raised up against God? How would you define those things? What? An idol? Okay. Yeah. Okay. So your idea is that it would be sort of a mythological high-mindedness of this is really what's going on. Okay. 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 So sort of the Athenian model of resurrection. Pfft, this guy doesn't know anything. He's not high-minded like we are. He believes in this resurrection thing. Okay? Yeah, I think those are two different ideas. This is more of your idea is more of the Corinthian, Ephesian model of we believe in idols. We believe in idols. And the Athenians across the sea we don't believe in any of that stuff. All right? We believe in humanity and secular humanism and those types of ideas. All right? So we demolish, we tear down arguments and every high-minded thing that is raised up against the knowledge of God. If you studied it in your 242 group, when Paul gets saved, converts, and he's there in Damascus, and he's arguing with the Damascus religious leaders, and he's just wearing them out, right? Well, where did he get all of his arguments to wear out the religious leaders in Damascus? Stephen, right? Because what did Stephen do to him in Jerusalem? Stephen wore him out. Stephen demolished all of his high-minded arguments, right? That's why he took him to the Sanhedrin. That's why they trumped up all these charges and ended up stoning him. So Paul goes up to Damascus to go round up some more so he can kill some more. And what happens? On the way, conversion, he starts to sit amongst the church. And then all of a sudden he goes, well, I want to go argue with these people. And I know exactly what arguments I'm going to use because Stephen wore me out with them. So Paul starts wearing out the Damascus religious leaders. And so what do they try to do to Paul? They try to kill him, which is generally the theme of Paul's life. all right? He goes, he argues, they try and kill him, he runs to the next place. He goes, he argues, they try and kill him, he runs to the next place, okay? Welcome to Paul, all right? But isn't that what God told him? I will show him how much he must suffer for my name, all right? That's kind of the point, until eventually he does get killed there in Rome, all right? So we demolish arguments and every high-minded thing that is raised up. So we tear down all these things that are raised up. And you can see the variation. It's just the opposite effect there. Against the knowledge of God, taking every thought captive to the obedience of Christ. All right? That's our own thoughts. We don't let anything slip. We control all of so not only are we controlling our power, but we're also controlling our mind and our thoughts. We don't let anything kind of stray away, because what happens? Eventually, I think, who said it? G.K. Chesterton says, we always get caught by the fringe on our garments. It's a great saying. We always get caught by the fringe on our garments, all right? So when we have those thoughts that stray from us, that's what's going to catch us every time. So Paul says, I'm very focused in this thing, all right? Again, that protes, that power under control is kind of what he's thinking through cognitively on this. All right, 6. And we are ready to punish any disobedience once your obedience has been confirmed or fulfilled or filled up. So once we have a good idea once you have a good idea of what the rules are and what everything is, now we're going to start enforcing these rules. There's one translation, the Moffat translation, actually has the word, instead of punish, it has court-martial. All right? Because isn't he using military terms here? We're tearing down fortresses, strongholds, our weapons of war. So Moffat takes this and says, let's interject the idea of military jargon into this. And so Paul says, we're going to start court-martialing those in the church once everybody knows the rules. All right? But we're going to know the rules first. All right? Because it's not fair for us just to kind of throw this onto new believers and go, that's it, we're kicking you out of the church. We're like, what? You gossip. That's it. You're out. Gone. All right, wait. All right, let's get the rules. And now once somebody does things, now we can adjust, okay? And I probably just lost the live feed, but that's okay. You should be in the room, all right? Anyway. All right, I'm bad. I know. It's okay. I don't mind. All right, 7. So look at what is obvious. Look at what's right in front of your face, prosopon, all right? So now he's going to sort of transition into a little different argument. If anyone, can you say this is the person who's been sort of dogging him? This is the guy, okay? If anyone is confident that he belongs to Christ or is Christ's, all right? That to be Christ, all right? It's more of a possessive thing. If you think you're Christ's, all right? If anyone in particular, all right? I'm telling you, he's talking about this guy, all right? If anyone is confident that he belongs to Christ, do you feel the arrogance in what Paul is kind of implying here? If you think you're like the only one who knows Christ, all right? He should remind himself. It means again think. He needs to think again. Right? You ever said that to anybody? Oh, you need to think again if you're going to try and do that. All right, teachers, I know you've said that 100 times. You need to think again because that's not going to work out well for you. All right? He should remind or think again to himself of this, that just as he is Christ or belongs to Christ, so are we. So do you see what he's kind of implying here? There's an arrogance to this guy who thinks he's got the direct line to God and everybody else is trying to catch up with him. And so what Paul is saying is this arrogance is what's feeding the criticism and the judgmentalism, all right? And I'm telling you, that will happen every time. Anytime Satan can convince you that you are morally, ethically, intellectually superior, it will always end up in criticism. Always. Caden went off to Impact, which is kind of like a retreat for A&M students, right? And yeah, he's been basically doing seminary work for the last 9 months, and then he's been teaching at Pine Cove Bible studies for the last, 3 months. And so I said, well, you ready for this? You ready to get in there and kind of learn some stuff and grow and everything? He goes, yeah, I guess. He said, I'm just worried that I'll be so far ahead of all of the other people they bring in to teach us. And I went, let's stop right there. All right. Yeah, you're 19, and I just said, you need to be real careful with that. I said, because that's the trap that Satan is going to bring you into. Because the second you think no one can teach you something, you're done. Because you're going to critique everyone put in your path, and when you start critiquing, you're not listening. All right? And I think this is what Paul is trying to say. And I love Paul's heart on this because Paul knows he knows more than everybody else in the room, all right? Nobody else got 3 years in Arabia in seminary, right? Galatians 1, all right? Paul, 3 years by himself with Jesus. I'll take that, all right? But at the same time, Paul's not going to go, well, because I know everything and more than any of you, I'll just tell you what to say. Yeah, he's kind of calm and very pro-taste that power under control. Yeah, Josh. Yeah. So let me repeat your question, and also make it simple. You asked the question: Is Paul going on 3 different tangents here? Always. Paul is always going on 3 different tangents. He's got 3 different things going all the time. Okay. So when you read Paul and you go, "I've lost him," you're reading Paul. Okay. Paul. He's hard to read. He's hard to understand, yes, because he does have that. And so Paul has 3 different lines of metaphor working here all at the same time. So yes, you're onto it, but that's just Paul. And so you kind of just have to go, okay, Paul, because he's writing to a varied audience. So some people in the room are military minded. Some people are Athenian minded. Some people are logically oriented. And he's hitting all of those groups all at the same time. And that's how Paul's mind works. And so that's where you have to just accept that Paul is not going to have this nice linear conversation. He's going to go in all these different directions. And then one of those directions is going to remind him of 4 other things. And then all of a sudden he's going to come back. I see reading Paul is kind of like watching Trump give a speech. Okay? He's on the teleprompter, and then all of a sudden, see you later. 10 minutes later, he comes right back to the teleprompter and picks up where he left off. All right? That's just kind of how Paul writes. So, all right, let's keep going. Verse 8. For here's the thing. If I boast, not like this guy's boasting because he thinks he's of Christ and everybody else is trying to catch up. But if I boast more or abundantly about my or our authority, and I love the way he always includes it, makes it plural. He doesn't ever say just me. It's always us, okay? Because, Luke's with him, Silas is with him, Timothy's with him, all these guys. Yeah, if I boast more or abundantly about our authority, and does Paul have a sense of authority? Where did Paul get his sense of authority to go do ministry? Did he get it just from a bubblegum machine of what? Back of a comic book ordination? No, Jesus says, you will be my instrument. And he says, okay, I'm the instrument, all right? So if I boast abundantly about my authority, which the Lord, who's the Lord? Jesus, always. Jesus is always Lord, okay? Which the Lord gave us for building you up and not doing what? Tearing you down. Same word. We demolish arguments. We demolish strongholds. And people demolish each other. That's not us. We don't do that. We don't do that with our authority. We build people up. We encourage them. We strengthen them. We disciple them. We pull them up. We build them up. It's literally the imagery of building a house, okay? Oikodomeo. It means to build a house up, okay? And not to tear one down. He says, if I boast about this, I'm not ashamed. Do you see the contrast that's working here? I'll boast about this, and I'm not ashamed of boasting about this. This is my calling. This is my gifting. This is what I do. This is what God has enabled me to do, all right? Y'all have heard me say that a lot. I have the gift of teaching. I know that. I know that because I don't know why I can do it. And people say, hey, you're pretty good at that. And I go, that's my gifting, all right? Am I ashamed of that? No, I boast in it all day long. You know why I boast in it? Because God gave me this ability. Now, I want to do it really, really well. And all of us have these giftings. We should all be boastful because we say, God has gifted me with the ability to do something in his church to his glory, building up his church and not tearing them down. Am I ashamed of that? Do I go, oh, I'm no good, I'm no good? No. Why would I say that? Do you understand what it would be if I say, oh, I'm just not a very good teacher? That's saying what about God's gifting? It's inadequate. God gave you a gift, but you're really bad at it. It's like the worst gifting ever, all right? Don't be ashamed of your gifting. Paul isn't. You've been given a gift. Own it, be proud of it, and do really cool stuff with it. And don't ever apologize for it. Paul doesn't. He doesn't need to, all right? 9, I don't want to seem as though I'm trying to terrify you with my letters. Did we have a change of conversation right there? Yes, this is Paul going, squirrel, over here, all right? So I don't want to seem as though I'm terrifying you with my letters. Now, this idea of to terrify with my letters, what has he said earlier about his letters? That I'm humble when I'm in the room with you, but when I send letters, I'm bold, all right? So I'm not trying to terrify you with the boldness of my letters. See how you can kind of incorporate that, all right? For it is said, and I don't know who says this. That's my question. Who says this? His letters are weighty and powerful, strong, iskuo. But his bodily appearance, and this is the word parousia, the second coming, the appearing of Christ. His bodily appearing, he's kind of, it's the Greek word asthenes. It means sickly. Paul was not a handsome fella from all indications in Scripture and commentaries and histories. Most people, he's scary smart. Most people say he was bald or balding, so eventually cut off his hair, all right, which is beautiful, all right? But they say he was bow-legged, had big bulgy eyes, and basically had one eyebrow. That's kind of the depiction people give. And he was a little short, all right? No one was going, put this guy on stage, televangelist, here he comes, all right? And this is what he's saying about himself. He's writing this. They say my letters are really powerful and weighty, but man, the guy's ugly. He's sickly looking. He just looks weak, all right? It's literally the word soma for body and parousia. So the appearance, like we said, the second coming is the appearing of Christ, the parousia. So when he walks in the room, people look at his soma, his physical body, and go, man, he's just sickly looking, all right? Caden came home from camp? He's lost like 20 pounds at camp in the summer. I'm like, dude, what? You need to eat a sandwich. I'm like just trying to feed him the whole time he was home. I just kept feeding him food, and he's like, I ate 3 bites, I'm full. I'm like, no. I write Court. I'm like, Court, what are the supplements we need to get in? Like some protein and some body mass builder and all this stuff. Because he just looked sickly, looked skinny, all right? Now, Paul's a different level of ugly on this one, okay? Because he ain't no young man, all right? Plus, he got stoned almost to death one time, right? He's going to have some scars after that, right? I always think it's funny that when he goes to the next town, he says, I was so grateful that you accepted me as I am, or as I was. And I thought, yeah, because you were all jacked up. You got scars going on here, a little rock stuck in your head over here. You got blood, an eyeball hanging out, all right? Pretty nasty, right, Catherine? All right? And he writes that to, I forget what church it is. It doesn't matter. But he writes that in his letter that I appreciate you accepting me the way you found me. All right? So anyway, that's a whole other thing. You get to read in context. All right? And his public speaking is, what does your translation say? What? Worthless? Amounts to nothing. My Holman is despicable. Imagine you telling me, you going out there and they go, how's your pastor? Well, he writes really good blogs, but he's kind of sickly looking, and it's hard to listen to him after a while. People go, well, can I come to your church then? That's Paul. Paul is writing this about himself, okay? So this is the depiction of him, all right? So verse 9 again, I don't want to seem as though I'm trying to terrify you with my letters, for it said, his letters are weighty and powerful, but his physical presence is weak, and his public speaking is despicable. Such a person, all right, I think he's talking about this person again, should consider or think about this, logizomai, should logically process this. What we are in the words of our letters when we're absent, this boldness that we have that's terrifying, everybody says. And some of your translators say we will be in action when present. That's not a future tense verb. In fact, there's not even a verb in that sentence. All right, it implies what we are in our letters is what we are in person. Don't try and play this off that, oh, he's really bold when he writes a letter, but he's just nothing when he gets there. He goes, no, I'm the same person, okay? But I can be bolder in a letter than I can be. The resolve is still there. The message is still there. It's just I try and be humble and accommodating when I'm face-to-face with you. When I'm not, I can be a little bolder. I can be a little stronger. And that makes sense, right? Absolutely. Yeah. Is he more confident? Is he more confident writing a letter? Aren't we all? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. If you're sending an email and it's a tough email, it's a little different than having that person sit in your desk and having that conversation face to face. And I think, and that's just because some people are more or less confrontational than others. Some people have no problem. You walk in the office, go, hey, we need to talk. Boom, 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 boom. All right? Some people just hate confrontation. Some people just thrive on it, okay? Paul is saying, my resolve is the same. Don't underestimate my resolve when I'm in person, okay? It's kind of what he's implying. 12. For we don't dare classify or compare ourselves with, here he is again, some who commend themselves. To commend yourself is to be, well, I should probably be the one who takes on this role. That volunteer who always thinks he's the best person, she's the best person for the job. This is this person who commends themselves. And Paul says, we don't classify or compare ourselves. This classify is to incrino. I use this example a lot that we need to improve on. That sometimes we evaluate ourselves by looking in a mirror, and sometimes we evaluate ourselves by looking through the window. Y'all with me? The proper thing is to do what? Through the mirror. So, because you evaluate yourself based on you and how you improved and how you got better or how you got worse. That's incrino, inside to judge. Soon crino is to look through the window and go, well, I'm with this person and I will judge myself in comparison. That's this idea. So to classify is I look in a mirror and go, I'm a good-looking fella, all right? I look out the window and I go, I'm not so good looking, all right? Because that person is better looking than that person and that person and that person. And you look in the mirror and go, I could be better. I could lose some weight, all right? My hair's getting a little thin, all right? A little gray on the sides. All this. So he goes, we don't even bother with that. And isn't that a healthy thing? Now, I'm not saying don't try and improve yourself. I think we all have improvements. We all have the ability to be better, all right? To read more, to study more, to lose some of that weight that we know we don't need, to gain some muscle, to do all these things. We can all do better with it. But people that obsess over it leads to one of two things, right? If you succeed, you get pride. And if you fail, you get depression. Where's the middle ground? There is no middle ground. All right? So Paul says, we don't bother with that stuff. In the ministry, it's not about comparing yourself or classifying yourself. We just don't bother with that, as some who commend themselves might do. Well, since I'm far more qualified than everybody else in the room to speak, I guess I'll volunteer. You see how he's kind of digging on this guy? All right? Yeah. But in measuring themselves by themselves and comparing themselves to themselves, they just don't get it. All right? That's what the translation should be. They just don't understand. They're totally missing the point of ministry. All right? That's not what it's about. It's not how good can I be and am I better than this person. The goal of ministry is faithfulness, period. It's not being better than this or better than that. It's just faithfulness. All right? God is going to make you competent. You just have to be faithful. All right? And that's all of our callings, no matter what our gifting is. It's, are you being faithful to what you do? All right? That's why I study so much. All right? Because I want to do this really, really well. I don't want to do it better than anybody else. I don't care. I mean, because seriously, how do you compare pastors? You go online, somebody goes, well, somebody recommend a great church for me, and 85 people go, our pastor, he preaches from the Bible. I'm like, well, congratulations. I think we all do that, more or less, all right? But it's not, no one's going, well, my pastor's better than your pastor, and my pastor's, no, I know, Dave, some people will go there, all right? But that's not the point. The point is not to compare and classify. It's just be faithful. And that's what Paul is arguing. I'm not going to compare myself. I'm not even going to classify myself. I just want to be faithful to what God has called me to do. And I'm not going to measure myself against somebody else. And I'm not going to compare myself to somebody else. I'm just going to do what I understand. And that's just to be faithful. And Paul gets it. These other don't. All right? And that's a very, very scary thing when you've got a minister that starts to compare themselves. What was it? We had a pastor, when we started a church, we had a family come over with us from this one church. And the former pastor went to them and said, oh, you like Bubba's preaching better than mine? Just in a confrontational way. And they were like, I think they wanted to say, well, I do now. But that was his thing. And he had no self-esteem and just constantly trying to sort of prove himself. And that's not the point. That is not ever, ever, ever the point. Just be faithful to what God has gifted you with, and you'll be fine. And that's what Paul understood. 13, we, however, will not boast. This is beyond measure. Does anybody have unmeasurable or something to that effect? It's an adjective that's ametros, not to be measured. Anybody have a different word? What do you have? Beyond limits. Okay, that's a horrible translation. I don't like that. What? Don't go there yet. Don't go there yet. The area of ministry, we'll get to that in just a second. All right? So, however, we will not boast beyond measure. He uses this word, I think, 3 times. But it's ametros. It's an unmeasurable thing. It's like measuring how good is your pastor. That's not measurable. All right? It's just not. All right? Not in any way, not in any objective standard. All right? So we don't boast about unmeasurable things, but according to the measure of the area of ministry. This is where we're going. Anybody have a different phrase here? This is a weird word. Area of influence. I like that. All right? This is the Greek word canon. All right? Not like canon. All right? This is the canon of Scripture, so the totality of Scripture or the totality of your doctrine, all right? So here's what he's saying. We don't measure according to things that aren't measurable. What we measure is what God has given us. And how are we doing with what God has given us? This area of ministry, this canon, or canonoia, all right? And so it's this idea of here's what God has given us. Here's what God has empowered us with, all right? And he has assigned or apportioned to us or shared with us or designated to us, all right, which reaches you guys. You guys are in my canon of ministry. All right, that's what Paul is saying to the Corinthians. You guys are within my reach that God has given me, okay? One lesson I had to learn when I was doing the church plant in Atlanta. When we started the church, I said, there's a 3-mile radius, and there's 75,000 people in a 3-mile radius of where we wanted to plant this church, all right? Houses, 250,000 to $1 million homes as far as the eye could see. Just a nice area, good area, and I thought, I don't really feel the need to reach outside of this area. All right, this is where I want to be. And as we started the church and started doing, Sundays and all that stuff, I kept going, God, why aren't you bringing more people in? All right, why aren't you bringing more people in? And God kept going, why aren't you out there with the people? Quit trying to shove more people in the door. You go get in their lives. And what I learned in that was, for that season of ministry, 8.5 years or so, it wasn't the effect of my ministry in that moment. My canon of ministry was not the people that walked in the room. It was the people with whom I walked into the room. So we had an elementary school right there. And God opened up a door for me to be on a parent advisory board or something like that, which led me to be able to head up a dad's volunteer program called Watchdogs. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's an awesome program. So I get to be in charge of it. And so I'm sitting here trying to grow a church in the middle of this, and all of a sudden, God hands me 200 email addresses of all the dads in this neighborhood. Not because I'm out there doing my church thing. No, it's because I got out of the church and quit worrying about getting people in the door of the church, and I got me out of the doors of the church. When the kids got older, out of elementary school, going to middle school, we have this FCA, which ran 250, 300 kids. And God said, you need to just go hang out, because Holland had started middle school. And I said, I'm just going to walk in the door. I'm going to sit over here on the side and just introduce myself to the FCA leader and said, hey, I'm a pastor in the area. Whatever you need, ask me. Otherwise, I'm just going to sit here and just do whatever. And within about 3 years, I'm like speaking every other meeting, and everybody in every kid in the whole area knew my name. I was either FCA guy or watchdog guy, okay? And I had access to all these people. Now, was our church growing? Nope. Wasn't at all. But was my area of ministry growing? Infinitely. I mean, I'm doing funerals for people that I've never even met before, but they knew I was watchdog guy and I was FCA guy. And so that's the difference. And Paul sees this. Paul understands his area of ministry. And I think churches have to get here, because it's old and boring to say, please come into our building. I want us to go, hey, get out of our building. Go do ministry in your neighborhood. Go be a part of your canon of ministry. Go do that at work, school, cul-de-sac, all this stuff. That's where we're going to be effective. That's our canon of ministry. So that's sort of the argument. I just want you to feel that different environment. 14, for we are not overextending ourselves as if we had not reached you, since we have come to you with the gospel. So we're not going, oh, you're too far out there, we can't get to you. No, we've already been there with you, all right? So we're not overextending ourselves. 15 is the key, 15 and 16. For we are not bragging, again, this beyond measure, about unmeasurable things. We're not bragging about unmeasurable things, about other people's labors, about what other people have done. We're not worried about that. But here's what we do. We have this hope that as your faith grows or increases, what do you have, right? Grows or increases? You have both words? Increase? Yeah, increase. Oxano, it just means to grow. As your faith grows, our canon of ministry, our area of ministry, the reach of our ministry will greatly increase into overflow. So the more your faith increases, it's almost like in a war, you advance a little bit and you get a beachhead, and then what can you do? I can move a little further. World War II, what did we do? How did we get Japan to surrender? We did what? We called island hopping, all right? If you studied this, Catherine, all right, island hopping, you'll get to it eventually, okay? So what do? We didn't go, hey, let's attack Tokyo, all right? No, we didn't do that. We did what? We took Okinawa. We took the Marianas. We took the Solomons. We took the Cook Islands. We eventually just moved our way. And this is this idea that he's saying, as your faith grows, our canon of ministry can grow. So as we reach somebody in our neighborhood, now they've got 12 people in their area of ministry. Now we've reached them. And those 12 people now have an area, and now we can reach them. And so what Paul is trying to do is kind of multi-level Christianity. All right? Multi-level marketing Christianity, isn't it? All right? And so he's saying as your faith increases, now look at what's going to happen. Now, what happens when your faith doesn't increase? What happens to our canon or our reach? What happens when we don't leave the building? Congratulations, we'll all be here the same time next year, except for those of you that get promoted and leave us like everybody else has. All right? And that's his goal, and that's how he sees church planting or church ministry. All right? So again, look at this. We have this hope. All right? This is our hope. All right? We're not hoping that this will happen. This is our hope. It's a noun. Don't ever use the word hope in a biblical sense as a verb. It's never a verb. It's always a noun. This is the unrevealed reality that we're staring into. We have this hope that as your faith increases, our area of ministry will be greatly enlarged into overflowing. All right? I don't know if your translation says that, but that's the Greek. So that, effectual, we may proclaim the good news to the regions beyond you. Not boasting about what's already been done in someone else's area of ministry. All right? So what's Paul's ambition? Paul has basically been in modern-day Turkey, and then he's kind of gone around the edge of the Aegean Sea, all right? And that's the extent of his ministry. That's the extent of the canon of his ministry up to this point. But where does he want to go? Where does Paul want to go? Come over here to Romans 15. I want you to see this, because y'all hesitated, so you don't know. Romans 15. All right, it's not too far away. In verse 20, I'll pick up about the middle of 19, something. As a result, I have fully proclaimed the good news about the Messiah from Jerusalem all the way around to Illyricum. Verse 20, my aim, my ambition, is to evangelize where Christ has not been named. That's a pretty cool ambition right there. That's kind of what Jim Elliott with Yawkin Indians, Through Gates of Splendor, if you ever read that. This was his ambition. I want to go where Christ is. They don't know the name of Christ, all right? So that I will not build on someone else's foundation, but as is written, those who are told about him will see, and those who have not heard will understand. 22, that is why I've been prevented many times from coming to you, Romans, because he hadn't been to Rome yet, all right? Remember, he's writing this a couple months after he writes the 2 Corinthians letter, all right? But now I no longer have any work to do in these provinces, and I've strongly desired for many years to come to you whenever I travel to Spain. So if you look at a map, he's never left the Greek Aegean Sea area, all right? But now where does he want to go? Does he want to go to Rome? Yes. And just stop over there on his way where? Keep going all the way to Spain, where the name of Christ has never even been named before. That's what he's saying. I want your faith to grow so that I can get a beachhead here, so that I can make it to Rome. And then I want to go to Rome, and I want to get a beachhead there so I can make it all the way to Spain. And then God will take me. Now, does he ever get there? Nope. Because he even asks, God, protect me as I go, and making my successful trip to Judea to hand off this collection, does that work out? No, what happens to him when here's your money, here's a collection we took up for you. What happens 5 minutes later? He's arrested, almost beat to death, all right? Then he gets thrown in prison, goes to Rome, writes a bunch of other letters, gets let out, goes back in and gets beheaded, never makes it past Rome. They did. I know the letters do make it. Exactly. So, and that's why we're sitting here today in many ways. Yeah, exactly. And so his canon of ministry is reaching. And this is what God's ambition is. And God is going to bring it to all the world. Okay? Now, come back to 2 Corinthians 10. Let's finish up. Last two phrases. It's a quote from Jeremiah 9. Jeremiah 9:24. So the one who boasts, and it's a little dig because who's boasting? Is Paul boasting? Yeah. What? I boast in my calling, in my authority, in my gifting. I'm not ashamed of that. All right? Who's boasting in other ways? That guy. All right? Whoever that guy is. So he kind of throws Jeremiah 9 out there. So the one who boasts must boast in the Lord. Not in his own gifting, not his own abilities, not in his compare and contrast and classifying and I'm this and comparing themselves to themselves. Boast in the Lord. Boast in what Christ has done. Again, always say, the Lord is Jesus. For it is not the one commending himself who is approved, all right, or thought well of, but the one the Lord commends. The one the Lord says, this is my man. This is the one I'm sending. And God does this with Paul, right? He does this with Ananias, doesn't he? Ananias, I'm sending you to Paul. Why Ananias? Was he that special? We don't know. I would love to know. I can't wait to meet him and go, Ananias, why you? Why did he pick you? 242 this week. It's going to be talking about the story of Cornelius. Cornelius, I need you to go send for somebody, and I want you to go send for Peter. That's the one the Lord commends. Did y'all see this? And here's my question. Why not us? This is what our prayer is so many times around here. God, commend us. Commend us to people. Have people just drive by out there and just go, I feel like we just need to go to that church. I can't tell you how many people have said that to me. We were just driving by and we thought, well, let's check out that church. And I said, that's because we've been praying that God would commend us, that we would be faithful, that we would be worthy of that commendation, that God would give us the opportunity and the chance to do that. And that's what we want to keep praying, but because we want the Lord to commend us to other people, that God would say, they're trustworthy with the gospel. And that includes this church as a whole, but includes individually each one of you. All right? That's the one the Lord commends. All right? Not the one that commends themselves. You go, well, I should be the one to do that. All right? We don't want to be that people. But we do want to be that to this neighborhood. So that's why we ask God to do that. Okay? So a little odd message. He's kind of defending himself, but at the same time kind of laying out, again, what's it like to be a minister? And what are the hard parts? And what are the tough parts? And what's the attitude you have to do it well? All right? So again, if you ever run anybody that wants to be in the ministry, have them read 2 Corinthians and get it down pat, or they're going to get destroyed. Okay? Any questions? Seeing none. All right, let me pray for us. Father, thank you for just the opportunity, again, to come and study this letter. I thank you for preserving it for these thousands of years so that we can understand what it was like for Paul and just the dynamics of the church. Father, may we do things really, really well here. And may you commend us to your people, to those that you are seeking and attempting to save. Father, may we be that chosen instrument. May we be the people that you trust and that you send us people who just desperately need to know your love. And may we love them beautifully, Father. Again, I thank you for Paul, and I thank you for his heart, and I thank you for his honesty and his boldness in the way he wrote these letters. And I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.